Coming up next on Executive Caterers Corporate Club at Landerhaven, we'll look at unleashing innovation with special panelists Dr. Luis Proenza, the president of the University of Akron, Baiju Shah, CEO of University Hospitals Biomotive, and Jim Free from the NASA Glenn Research Center. The program will be moderated by Fox 8's Emmy Award-winning anchor Lou Maglio, and they'll be discussing how innovation in technology can help drive the economic development of Northeast Ohio.
From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. We're so happy to be here today and happy you're here with us today. Feel free to ask a lot of questions later on. I had a fantastic lunch, which is what you're having right now. But more than just the food was the conversation, because I had a delightful time talking to these three individuals about the aspect of how do we unleash innovation, how do we keep jobs in Northeast Ohio. It's fascinating. They have some great ideas. Our guests today are Baiju Shah, who is the CEO of Biomotive. Feel free. All right. Luis Proenza, who you've seen many times on TV. He is the president of the University of Akron. And Jim Free, who's the deputy director out at NASA. And they all know more than a little bit about innovation and just as importantly, how to get that innovation to market. Let's talk with Baiju first and your company. What exactly do you do? I mean, you started from the bottom up and you've built quite a company. How does it work?
Well, we're still just getting started, but thank you. Biomotive's mission is to accelerate breakthrough drug discoveries from across this country into products that benefit patients. That's essentially what we do. Now, we're a part of the Harrington Project, which is centered at university hospitals. This includes a nonprofit and a for-profit element. We're the for-profit side of it. And we take in innovation from institutions all around our country that are very promising in terms of their potential to address a disease that we don't have a good cure for today or a good therapy for. And we help develop those drugs here in Northeast Ohio. So we're bringing innovation from all around the country here to our region.
Which is a fantastic thing. And there's a symbiotic relationship between these three guys. Luis, why don't you talk about your relationship with Baiju and how it's helping the University of Akron?
We've known each other for quite some time, but one of the projects we worked on was the creation of the Bioinnovation Institute in Akron, the Austin Bioinnovation Institute. And it takes the fundamental technologies that we developed in material science in polymers, and it's important to what he's doing now, because if you take the water and the minerals out of your body, the rest of you are polymeric structures, okay? So it's likely, therefore, that polymers will become very important to medical devices, and as we develop very sophisticated polymers that can do things, also provide an opportunity for those functional polymers to do things in our body that our bodies can't do for themselves. That's one of the things, but together we also have a great affinity of how it is that we spur the time, make it shorter from the discovery of a new technology to its application either in medicine or in industry of whatever sort. So that getting the innovation to market is something that drives us both.
And we'll be talking more about that and exactly how it works later on. Now, Jim, you know, many people still, I think, look at NASA as a government agency, government funded. You're out there in North Olmsted area.
Right next to the airport.
Right next to the airport. You know where they are. But it's not just a government entity anymore. You do a lot of collaboration with private industries and Baiju. Tell us how that works and what sorts of technologies you've been able to develop thanks to these collaborations.
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, NASA's tradition, mission, put people in space, make flying safer and more efficient. Right here in Cleveland, we've worked with Mr. Shah for years on his previously successful endeavor of BioEnterprise on medical device advancement. And also with Dr. Proenza on some of our technologies that are helping us take them to manufacturability. We're not good at manufacturing. We have great ideas. We can take the concept so far, but we're not the ones to figure out how to make it cheap, how to make it better, and how to make it in quantities people can use. And our aerogel polymer work with Dr. Proenza at the University of Akron is the perfect example. So
well,
absolutely
let's talk
connected.
more about that aerogel polymer, because you were talking about it backstage. You're smiling. It's really a terrific technology that everybody's going to have to take advantage of at one point.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's fantastic. It's really going to innovate how we insulation techniques for home, for clothing, for space travel. By the way, I got to throw that in. I'll get thrown out of NASA if I don't throw that in. But it will. It's we were talking about a 1 millimeter thickness of our aerogel has twice the insulation value as 6 inches of fiberglass right now. So you can imagine we have great images of how we project that will look on the loss of heat from a home. Just tremendous from what we're trying to affect from a government perspective. We always will be a government agency, but trying to affect in terms of helping every day, how do you put space in your home is the way we like to phrase it.
Well, it's fantastic. And so much of the conversation we've had here lately with the political campaign and just in our daily lives has to do with jobs and these technologies that we're developing here in Northeast Ohio. Baiju, what is the hope in terms of jobs? I mean, I think people have this idea that all the tech jobs, all the innovation is coming from Silicon Valley, the East Coast corridors, but you're very optimistic about what we can do here.
Sure. There was a campaign.
Oh, did you hear about the campaign?
You know, what I feel as Clevelanders here, because I'm a born and raised Clevelander, is that too often we're still looking for the Fortune 100 company to show up. We're used to being a culture of Fortune 100 companies. And when you look at what's happened in our community over the last decade, it's thousands of small firms, many of them based on technology innovation, whether it's medical or polymers or space science, that are growing and thriving and creating the types of jobs that are attracting individuals back to Cleveland or to Cleveland for the first time. In the medical industry alone, we've grown from 2000 to 2010 by well over 5,000 jobs in just that sector. And it certainly happened in other technology sectors as well. And in fact, most of that talent is coming from outside the region to come here for the positions that are being created.
And Luis, at the University of Akron, I mean, you've been at the forefront of so much of this. What does it mean? How does it help your students there? What do they learn with these collaborations? And secondarily, when they learn through these collaborations, there is a greater tendency for them to get jobs and stay right here in Northeast Ohio.
Well, the exciting thing about our programs is that they're all very much related to the major economic clusters of Northeast Ohio. Thus, everything that we do in the laboratory that can become a new technology or a new company has the likelihood that the student that has worked on them will find one or many job opportunities, because if you just take the polymer industry, it's 1,800 different companies in Northeast Ohio alone, and Ohio is the #1 employer of polymer-related work in the country. But in so many other ways, in engineering and corrosion management, in biomedical applications, et cetera, our kids are learning right alongside their industry counterparts and thereby having a leg up compared to others that don't have that opportunity because the programs in some other institutions are not as tightly linked as ours are.
So clearly you're at the forefront of this and dominating it really, but that would be something that you would advise our entire educational system to get on board with.
Well, it's critical, as I'm sure Baiju could speak about just as well, and Jim. What our country needs is to really optimize the conditions for innovation. Innovation takes place in what we're calling a national innovation ecosystem, many parts which, when they work optimally together, they create the new value that enables us not only to have new jobs, but to improve our standard of living and create new wealth. So we do have that opportunity, and in fact, at the University of Akron, we've created 50 brand new companies in the last few years. Ooh. Half of which came from our own technologies, things that came out of our laboratories, but the other half, the other 25, from technologies that, working with industry partners, we were able to take because they weren't using them, and create new value, new companies, new jobs.
And Jim, you could talk about NASA too, the technology shows you put on already. How have they been greeted? And I know they've generated some business from entrepreneurs out there who have seen some of the things that NASA has developed that maybe a lot of people don't know about.
Absolutely. Last year we had an auto showcase out at our facility, and we were able to work some partnerships there with Honda of America to transfer some of our materials technology, some of our power technologies to them. We had a Glen-only technology showcase last December, which we just signed an agreement for breath analyzers. And we're about to have one November 27th through the 29th, which is NASA-wide, highlighting about 95 of our different technologies that are available to be licensed for companies to use, technologies that exist today that are ready to be manufactured.
Now let's talk about the other big issue here, money. You know, these are great and grandiose ideas, but they cost money, and sometimes it seems like, especially the economy today, nobody has any money. Nobody wants to invest. You go to your investors. What do you say? How hard was it when you started Baiju to get people to kick in money to get you started?
Well, I think you've always got to capture your investors first with a vision and a mission that is compelling. Right? That has to be backed up by a solid business plan and a business case in terms of how they're going to earn their returns. But you have to inspire your investors much the way you have to inspire your employees or other partners in your business. And I do think it is harder today to get money because of the economic conditions than it certainly was 4 or 5 years ago. But for good ideas and good plans, the money is still out there. And important to, I think, folks in Northeast Ohio to understand is the money is out there on a national or global basis. And it's willing to invest in Northeast Ohio into companies and projects that we're developing here. You don't have to look for it just locally. It is out there. Our region is on the map in certain technology segments, and people are used to investing in our companies.
And let's face it, Luis, you can't just sit on campus anymore and run the university. You can't be merely an educator. You have to be a business person. You have to be a marketer. And you have to go out there and do the same things that Baiju has just been talking about in terms of luring money to the University of Akron.
Oh, very much so, and we've worked together on some of those issues. The Austin Bioinnovation Institute is an example where we attracted a significant $20 million investment from a private foundation, matched by our partners, matched by the state one of these days, and by our own fundraising. But our primary investors in the area of innovation where universities are concerned are the federal government, all of the agencies like the National Institutes of Health, National Science Foundation, et cetera, as well as private sector investors, whether it's companies or individuals. And we attract, in other words, because of the expertise resident at the university, investment from these sources that would not be here but for that talent. And one of the tasks that I think we need to collectively work on in order to advance the innovation capacity here is to invest more in attracting the talent whose presence here will enable other investors to want to come and invest in these technologies and these opportunities. That is vital because we are really a little bit shy in terms of the number of people that we need in various technical areas to make the kind of technological leaps that will really spur economic growth.
Well, that leads me to a question for Jim. We were talking backstage, a staggering number of PhDs working at your place. Is it difficult for you to find, is it getting more difficult for you to find people with these specific technological abilities to work at NASA?
I think generally the country has an issue of people going into science, technology, engineering, and math. Fortunately, with the NASA brand name, people like to come to us. But I think as a country, we have to worry about that in the long haul. So part of what we do is try and inspire that in the younger kids and all the way through the university experience to get folks to go into engineering and math. And fortunately, our brand still brings the best to us.
The famous NASA brand. Let's talk now about something everybody here, I'm sure, has been involved with the discussion or certainly has heard about the discussion about the Medical Mart, which is coming downtown. And certainly there's been a certain amount of controversy about that. It's a lot of money. Will conventions really come here? Will there be a payoff to that? I know you're very supportive, Baiju. Tell me why.
Well, I think the vision for the Medical Mart has never been well understood or well communicated, I should say, in the public. So the thought that's out there in the public is that this is a convention facility and that's the be-all, end-all of what this is supposed to mean for our community. In fact, it's got much more potential, and I think under new management that has just started there under Jim Bennett's leadership, it's starting to realize that vision. So first and foremost, the name is going to change because all of the industry participants that are lining up to be tenants, like GE, which just announced last week, and several others that are about to announce, view it as a space that is about innovation. It's about collaborating with your competitors. It's about collaborating with organizations to really showcase what the current state of the art is and the future is in healthcare. And that opportunity exists to build on the strengths of our region and to really cement our reputation as one of the medical capitals in the country, if not the world. Now, in addition to bringing those tenants here and to bringing the shows here, if you think about it, if you have all of this traffic coming in, and we do have lots of medical shows and meetings that have already signed up, you then have an opportunity as a regional entrepreneur like I am today to showcase my innovation to a national platform right in my own backyard. So there's an advantage to entrepreneurs that are located here in Northeast Ohio. And that same advantage then becomes a point of attraction. So in my old role at BioEnterprise, we would talk to entrepreneurs about moving their companies to Northeast Ohio. And one of the points that was of interest to them was the Medical Mart, because it gives them that same advantage that we have here in Cleveland, as opposed to where they might have been starting their business.
And along those lines, Luis, is it your belief, I mean, let's face it, economy's changing dramatically around Northeast Ohio, the old Rust Belt, manufacturing, steel, auto industry, which in some cases is starting to bounce back now. But is it your view that things like the Medical Mart will help this community evolve into another sort of economy?
Oh, of course, and what we're also seeing is that the mainstay industries that have long provided the backing of our economy are springing back up, and that we're taking advantages of those things that were once thought to be disadvantages. For example, thanks to the Department of Defense, we worked together to build a corrosion program. It's a $400 billion problem for the nation and a $40 billion problem for the Department of Defense alone. They approached us about starting the first ever baccalaureate program in corrosion engineering and a consortium of universities that support corrosion and material handling. And we are already making significant advances there. In a sense, we're becoming rust busters, so to speak.
It's a great thing to be. And how about you, Jim, with your relationship? I mean, we can all agree that we have a burgeoning and wonderful medical community here, all the hospitals, the facilitators, the physicians, researchers, whatever. You have a relationship with the medical community in Northeast Ohio as well that's very critical.
We absolutely do. We have partnerships both with UH and the clinic. The example I'll give for the clinic is we've done a study on orbit. When you're on orbit for a long time, you lose bone density and you become more susceptible to hip fractures when you return. And we've taken that research done on orbit with the clinic and are porting that over to as we age, how can we predict or prevent those hip fractures with people here on Earth?
Well, I hope everybody can agree that so far this has been a fascinating and an illuminating discussion. I have learned a lot. There's a lot more to come, and we'll be right back with more discussion and later on some of your questions. We'll be right back.
Lander Haven was created for that special moment in people's lives, and that special moment is a wedding reception. From the concept to the decorations to the entrance down the staircase, creating the magic with great service, fine wine and food, an elegant wedding cake, beautiful grounds and gardens, unforgettable images. For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Lander Haven.
Is it getting so frustrating at your office that it's harder and harder and harder to get any work done? You need services you can count on, starting with Business Class Phone from Time Warner Cable Business Class. Get Business Class Phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Why put up with more frustrations than you have to? Enjoy our reliable solutions. Get Business Class Phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Time Warner Cable Business Class.
You live in Ohio, you work in Ohio, and when you have questions about your health insurance, you like talking with someone who's right here in Ohio. That's why you carry the Medical Mutual card. Our card comes with the best customer service anywhere. More than 2,700 dedicated employees are right here in Ohio. It's our job to take care of your healthcare needs, so you can focus on what's most important, getting well. Medical Mutual, the official health insurer of the Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns.
Curiosity inspires us to explore our world with open eyes and an open mind. It invites unique experiences we can learn and grow from. It's an essential root of our culture. So, when does culture meet with curiosity? Around noon. Listen with curiosity. Join the conversation tomorrow around noon on 90.3 WCPN, your all-day brain food.
Thank you again, everybody. Welcome back to Executive Caterers at Lander Haven. We were talking about unleashing innovation today. We've had a great time, learned some interesting information already. Going to learn a lot more now. The guests are Baiju Shah, the CEO of Biomotive, Luis Proenza from the University of Akron. Not just from there, he is the president of the University of Akron. It's a big deal. And also Jim Free, another big deal, deputy director of NASA. And we were talking during the break about this whole idea of regionalism and changing our mindset around here. You know, not to bring up the old days, but the river catching fire, the mistake on the lake, the sports teams that, you know, have struggled a bit over the years. But there's this negative perception that I think a lot of people, even here in Northeast Ohio, have about their own community. And I think in some ways that affects the interest of people from outside the community to come here, correct?
There's no question. I mean, the first question that often gets asked, I think, when someone moves to our community is, why did you move here? Right? It's not a welcoming question, it's a why did you move here? You know, it sort of symbolizes sort of our own sense of self-identity, which is really troubling because, you know, the fields I think that all three of us work, we are among the best places in the country in these different industrial sectors. People of great talent want to work in our region. They'll migrate to our companies. They'll migrate to our great institutions and organizations because of the opportunity that exists here. And I think as Northeast Ohioans, we don't have a great sense of ourselves as an innovative region. We're still stuck in the Rust Belt mentality where we still think of ourselves as manufacturing heavy, factory heavy type of economy, when that's not the case, and it hasn't been the case for the last couple of decades.
And Luis, we're going to talk about the University of Akron soccer team right now. Why is he veering into sport? Yeah. You see that? He's got one of the greatest programs, national champion a couple of years ago, one of the greatest programs in the country, top ranked this year. But the question a lot of people have, and this is how it folds into the economy, these kids that are coming to play soccer at the University of Akron come from all over the country largely, and sometimes from outside the country, but mostly they're U.S. kids, California, Dallas. I see where they're coming from, and they're getting recruited by UCLA, Virginia, North Carolina, Duke, all the greatest teams in the country, and yet they choose Akron. And I'm sure they hear, Akron, what's in Akron? Why are you going to Akron? But there's a reason why they're going to Akron, and that folds into what the economy can mean through your sports team. Why are they coming there?
Well, they come because of a style of play, the approach that has made them very distinctive. And it ties back to regionalism in a sense, because it is distinctive, and it's a recognition that it's not about a place, it's about a region. Economies are no longer local, they're regional. And Baiju and I often use a piece of NASA stuff, a photograph taken at night of the world. And if you look at Ohio from a satellite photograph taken at night, you don't see Cleveland and Akron and Canton as different places. It's one beautiful luminous whole that defines our region. And it's that kind of working together to expand our technology that also translates into the kind of success that we see with our soccer, or the kind of success that we see in the investments that we've each received, the growth of our Archangel, Akron Regional Change Agents, Angel Financing Network. Lots of very good things about that if we stop and not think about the old geopolitical maps, because they're irrelevant anymore.
And I remember, too, when I came to Cleveland 35 years ago, I just turned down a job in San Francisco. And when I told my family and friends that I was going to Cleveland, I mean, it was, you talk about shock and awe and disappointment and dismay, and why would we want to visit you in Cleveland when you could go to San Francisco? But that's the kind of mindset that I think a lot of people have, and 35 years later, I'm still here. But Jim, you too can talk about this whole idea of our identity as a Northeast Ohio community.
Absolutely. We talk about it all the time. We have this Midwestern kind of down-homeness where we don't want to reach out and claim what is really ours. I'll do some self-promotion for a moment. Anyone that has DirecTV or Dish TV has NASA Glenn to thank for it. We developed Ka-band technology that revolutionized satellite communications. That's what we're doing, the next generation of that. And that's how we're attracting people. That's how we're attracting the young kids with those tough challenges and hard problems to overcome, that they can say, I was part of that, and DirecTV is a great example of it.
Yeah, this whole panel here is big on Northeast Ohio, as I know you are too. What about some of the other companies, Baiju? I mean, we've talked about you and Akron and NASA, but lots of other companies, startup companies that are still fairly new, that have made an incredible mark nationally, in some cases internationally.
Yeah, so, you know, I think as a person in the region, you have to be proud of the companies and the entrepreneurs that succeed, the inventors that succeed, and we too often don't recognize them as one of our own, or we don't recognize them as truly innovative because we think of them as having been around forever. So I always like to use the example of STERIS. STERIS is a $2 billion global company today. STERIS was a startup in 1987. It was absolutely nothing in 1987. And it's grown in that time. Now, we take it for granted as a Fortune 1000 company, but that was an entrepreneur and investors and lots of partners that have grown that company. And you can go through the healthcare industry, which I know well, and see this again and again. The Harrington family, which provided the philanthropic gift to start the Harrington Project, that's Edge Park Surgical. Now, I'll bet you most of you in this audience have never heard of Edge Park Surgical. But they employ over 1,100 people today out in Twinsburg. It started from nothing in 1991. And they were able to obviously be quite successful. They sold that company to Goldman Sachs, and they've been able to be philanthropic. But you go through it again and again. Member Health out in Solon, $2 billion in revenue. Most people here don't know that Member Health exists, and they certainly don't know that it exists in Solon. It's there. Progressive Insurance, we talked a little bit about. Progressive Insurance started in the 60s, right? So it's still a startup on the grand scale of sort of company development. And we have to, I think, appreciate that these companies take some time to grow and develop. Now, at the same time as these companies can grow and develop to become billions or multi-billion-dollar global companies, many entrepreneurs and inventors want to take a company so far, and then they want to sell it, and they want to start the next one. And so I always like to use the example of Ray Dalton, who's the CEO of PartSource in Aurora, Ohio. PartSource is a great company. They're doing well over $100 million in revenue, about 300 employees today. This is Ray's 7th startup in Northeast Ohio. He has a habit of growing his companies to about $50 million in revenue, and then he sells them, and then he goes back and starts the next thing. And I think that that's what our economy consists of today. It's what the polymer economy is largely. I mean, we think of Goodyear and the large, polymer companies, but the 1,800 firms that exist are these entrepreneurs that just keep doing it again and again and again. And that's part of, I think, the story that needs to be better understood here.
And Luis, you were talking too about, many of us want to be comfortable in our jobs and maybe get the gold watch after 30, 40 years with a company and feel like we're not big fans of change. But you're saying in the world we live in today, young people need to know this, and even older people, that change several times in a career is going to become the norm.
Indeed, and just to pick up where Baiju kind of left off, indeed, we have a lot of examples of that where many of our alumni have started companies and moved forward. But many of our students are finding that the strongest job skill that they will have in this new global economy is emotional resilience, because things change so fast. So if you remember, and don't listen to too many of our politicians, because all they want is the big company from somebody else, okay? The mainstay of our economy, the way in which new jobs are created, are through small company startups, and they're growing in enormous ways. Each year, thousands of jobs get created, not so much by the large companies. The vast majority of the new jobs that are created are by the small companies. And it's exciting also to see that we are overcoming some of this, if you wish, risk aversion and secretiveness that has so long characterized Northeast Ohio. Recently, we started working with a number of companies, indeed, to pull some of the technology that they're not using, or that they're using in their particular field of use, but which may have many other applications. They can retain the rights to their own business application, but allow us to work together with them and create other companies that can apply that same technology, perhaps in biomedical applications, perhaps in automotive applications, or whatever. So there is a lot of things changing now, and kids need to be aware of how rapidly change and be adaptable to that change.
You did mention that backstage over that very productive lunch, and that was interesting to me. There's a lot of technologies that are out there in these companies and perhaps in universities that really are sitting on the shelf and not being utilized. How does that happen, and how do we tap into that? And I guess the third aspect of that is, how can we make use of that in terms of building more companies?
Well, you know, it has just been, shall we say, a legacy of old economies where you know, anything you invented, you put on the shelf because, hey, you developed it, you don't want anybody else to have it, okay? You may not even think that you'll ever use it. But things are changing, and, you know, Procter & Gamble now annually says that they want at least half of their new products, the new ideas for new products, to come from outside. And virtually every company today is recognizing that collaboration, even with competitors, is vital to their competitive success. That's what's new about the global economy.
I had the feeling you wanted to say something about that,
I was going to
too.
say, you know, in many ways, that's a lot of what we're trying to do in the Harrington Project, is to bring in this innovation that's been sitting on the shelves of research institutions around our country, to some extent inside pharmaceutical companies as well, and we want to bring that innovation here, and we're doing it through not only on the nonprofit side, a national call for competition that's attracting these technologies. Here in 2 weeks, we'll be announcing the first class of Harrington Scholars. But on the for-profit side, Biomotive, we're looking at technologies all around the country. So it's there, and I think we can bring it here to Northeast Ohio because we do have a unique system for developing entrepreneurs and developing innovation here in Northeast Ohio that is largely unparalleled around the country right now. And we have this opportunity to bring the innovation here to grow the companies to continue to grow our economy in Northeast Ohio.
And I know, go ahead.
You know, I would add too, we've just started the presidential initiative called Adopt a City, which with the Manufacturing Alliance here in Cleveland, where we solicited to offer a portion of our engineer and technician time to develop a technology, an idea that someone has, overcome a problem they're having, to spur that economic development. And we have 8 agreements right now. My favorite one is there's a gentleman in town called Gotta Groove Records, who we're helping, had trouble doing the alignment to press the vinyl records that people want to go back to. And we helped him figure out how to do that to help his business. And we have 7 other examples where we're doing that.
They want to go back to vinyl records.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How about 8 tracks?
Yeah.
No, not 8 tracks.
Now you're just talking crazy.
But it is, but it's all very important for you now, with less government funding, to somehow leverage private investors to come in and to work with them. Do you have any notion in terms of percentages, how much of your funding now comes from the feds as opposed to private, as opposed to the past?
Right now we're about, we do about 8% of what we call reimbursable business, which is non-taxpayer dollars. And it's all based on what the taxpayers have paid for. So there's kind of this closed loop cycle of the taxpayers have paid for these technologies that we've had our head down for years using for very specific applications. The taxpayers can get that return on investment now by taking advantage of this treasure trove that we sit on. That's what I always say to our employees. We sit on a treasure trove of technologies that we owe giving back, and it's just trying to find a way to do that. I said before, I didn't go to school to be a marketing major. There's a reason for that. But now I need to be that. I need to have a way to share that technology back and let people benefit from it.
Well, and that is, you mentioned that, but that is very important to what you do today.
Sure.
You have to go out and sell. You've got to market it, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be out there telling your story, but that's what's going to attract the innovation in. Right? You have to give them a vision for how you're going to make that invention successful when it comes into your hands for further development.
And Luis, I mean, you were, I don't know if you were the first, but you were among the first when you came to Akron. How many years ago? 15 years ago? You started seeing Luis on TV a lot, talking about his university, which has grown in leaps and bounds and gotten to be so terrific over the years. But having people see the face of the University of Akron was, again, part of the marketing technique to show how far Akron had come and was going to go.
And, indeed, and linking it to what it not only had done, but what it can do and continue to do, we found ourselves really linking ourselves much more closely with not the major industrial clusters, our community, the region as a whole, and defining the university as a platform, a broad-based tool chest, if you will, for economic vitality and growth. So that's been key to our success. And we've created, indeed, one of the most beautiful metropolitan-sided campus anywhere in the world.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it lately, you ought to. It absolutely is a beautiful place. And Jim, even NASA, you know, a lot of people just drive by and they see that building, it says NASA back there, but it's also part of your mission to get more out of the community, bring the visitor center out. I mean, a lot of people almost take NASA Glenn, NASA Lewis, for granted.
Absolutely, yes. It's been a continuing frustration of mine that we're an entity that has 3,000 jobs, $1 billion economic impact, and people don't understand that, don't see it. And it's our job, it's one of our goals in our strategic plan to be an integral part of the community. Our visitor center at the Great Lakes Science Center is probably our crown jewel of how we can give back to the community and get people to understand the work that we do right here in Cleveland. There's only 9 other NASA centers in the country, and we should be proud of having that right here. And I'm a native Clevelander, so I can say that.
And with a $1 billion economic impact, people need to know about that when they're talking about maybe making cuts to NASA. You need to get the word out in terms of what NASA does in terms of helping the public, and also that's an explosive economic impact.
It really is, and it's something that I think if we were trying to attract an entity here with that kind of impact, we'd be putting a lot of effort. I think for all of the entities here in Cleveland, we need to do that and keep this region growing.
And if you all thought you had a lot of the political campaign and all the commercials, then it was incredible, it was dizzying. Try to be in my position. I mean, I'm on the news talking about this every day for months and months. But one of the things that came up commonly was impedance to business in terms of getting going, whether it was taxes, whether it was restrictions. What's been your view of that? Are those things that impede the ability of smaller businesses to get going, too many regulations, or not?
Well, I think you're always going to have some level of regulation and some level of taxation. And so I think we can always look for ways to improve it and make it easier, in particular for small businesses. The challenge that I think Washington has is they treat all organizations, whether it's businesses or institutions or agencies, as kind of a one-size-fits-all. And there are some regulations that make sense and are affordable if you are a multi-billion-dollar global company, and others that are absolutely not going to be feasible for a small firm of just 10 to 15 people. And Washington doesn't do a good job of distinguishing between the sizes of businesses. So that's really, I think, the challenge that we have to look at as we put in place business or tax policy. How do you make sure you're not killing the innovative spirit by trying to overregulate it?
You're nodding your head. Obviously, you've had some experience along those lines.
Well, yes, there's a couple of pieces of legislation that I've been trying to get made permanent for the last 30 years, and they're still not.
30
years. It's a bit of a challenge. But, you know, keeping the innovation engine moving is critical. The investment that our country makes is very substantial, but is increasingly being challenged by the investments elsewhere. Think about it. We once were probably 75% of all of the R&D done around the world. We're now less than 40%. The world R&D investment is in excess of $1 trillion. We're now at about $400 billion, and comparative to the rest of the world, we're getting smaller, relatively speaking, okay? Now, this is exciting in one way because it means that a lot of other technologies, as Baiju said, are being developed elsewhere, and he wants to bring whatever he can here to make it, put it to work for our benefit and so forth. But it also means that there's a lot more competition, and we have to keep that innovation engine moving to supporting the National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation, Department of Energy, et cetera. It's very critical that we not only grow the talent that needs to be interested in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because that's where the new companies are going to be formed, is out of these technologies, but to have the investment that enables then that new innovation to get created, because without it, if there's no new ideas in the pipeline, guess what happens? We dry up.
Nothing happens. We're talking about unleashing innovation. We're at Executive Caterers in Lander Haven, and when we come back, our wonderful audience here is going to have a chance to ask some questions, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
For a wedding reception you'll always remember, Executive Caterers at Landerhaven.
Is it getting so frustrating at your office that it's harder and harder and harder to get any work done? You need services you can count on, starting with business class phone from Time Warner Cable Business Class. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Why put up with more frustrations than you have to? Enjoy our reliable solutions. Get business class phone and receive up to 6 months free internet or cable TV. Time Warner Cable Business Class.
You live in Ohio, you work in Ohio. And when you have questions about your health insurance, you like talking with someone who's right here in Ohio. That's why you carry the Medical Mutual card. Our card comes with the best customer service anywhere. More than 2,700 dedicated employees are right here in Ohio. It's our job to take care of your healthcare needs, so you can focus on what's most important, getting well. Medical Mutual, the official health insurer of the Cleveland Indians, Cavaliers, and Browns.
Welcome back to Executive Caterers at Landerhaven. We are talking about the very important issue of unleashing innovation here in Northeast Ohio. I've had a wonderful discussion so far, and in this segment, we're going to take some questions from our audience here. But first, Baiju, I wanted to get into a subject you brought up just as we went to the break. In terms of technologies and in terms of great things happening in Northeast Ohio, people don't talk about this enough, but what about the great chefs and the industry they are building here?
Yeah, I mean, our chefs are wonderful, right? We were talking in the break here about how uncomfortable many of us are in the Midwest about self-promoting. Our entrepreneurs, even when they've been wildly successful, hate to have the spotlight shined on them because they're Midwestern and they're modest. But our chefs are actually becoming celebrity chefs. And if you think about it, they're all entrepreneurs. They're all innovative, not only in their creations, but they're entrepreneurs in terms of their restaurants, their food programs, their books. I mean, they're becoming a visible symbol of how this region is transforming itself back into a region of innovation.
Yeah, it's not just the internationally famous guys, the Michael Simons. The guy at Melt, I went there once, had to wait 3 hours for a sandwich, right? I mean, it's always packed. That's a guy that went to the culinary school at Tri-C and has made a remarkable business for himself. And I know, Luis, you can talk about some other things, things that are happening here in Northeast Ohio now that bode very well for the future of our region.
Sure. Well, innovation cuts across the spectrum of industries. And indeed, we see it in business model innovation. We see it in the arts. We see it in so many other ways that impact the quality of life. And some of that creates business opportunities that attract talent, that attract investment, and so it's vital to think of innovation as a way of creating new value in our communities, in our economy.
And Jim, I know you're doing a great job of doing that, but you also have to work with your employees and convincing them to somehow, even in the world of science, but to think way outside the box and to look for new directions to take NASA, correct?
It is, absolutely. We've started to look at having a private sector model for new business, which is foreign to the government agencies, but we're looking at sector management, we're looking at new business boards, new business panels, new processes that we're not used to, and it's a big discomfort level. We had one this morning right before I came. And getting people to get comfortable with that is difficult, but when they see that their idea has this application and that application, that's what's nurturing and inspiring to engineers and scientists, that their products are getting used. They can see it in space, they can see it right down here. That's when it becomes an easy sell.
Sure. And what about, Baiju, the idea of, and it's a delicate subject here, but the idea of outsourcing jobs to other places, other parts of this country, but internationally as well? You have obviously chosen not to do that, but what are some of the lures for that you face and some of the incentives not to go in that direction?
Well, I think we have to think of ourselves as a competitive environment, a competitive regional environment in a global economy. And for businesses, including our own, there will be times when the most effective way to develop a product will be to do it with overseas resources. And we have to do that because that's how our enterprise is sustainable. But we also need to look at the world as an opportunity. So from our perspective, it's a source of innovation. We're looking at products from around the world, not just from around the United States, to bring into Northeast Ohio. and it's obviously a source of markets. Our patients are worldwide. And we have to stop worrying about outsourcing and start thinking of how do we collaborate to grow our firms in a global economy.
You said yes. I want to hear more about that.
Well, it's just that our politicians tend to scare us. An economy grows by adding new jobs at the cutting edge of the economy at the same time that it's destroying old jobs. And most of the things that we believe got outsourced are jobs that just no longer exist in our economy. Okay. Now, the exciting thing, as Baiju is describing, is to take and move value from wherever it may lie to create new value, competitive advantage. And that's the reality of things. Don't get frightened by the notion of politicians' scare tactics of outsourcing. You don't want those jobs anyway.
Very interesting point. You could talk a little bit about that too, because obviously all three of you have looked at these issues.
We have, and from an international perspective, we are very well positioned because people want to come to us for our technologies, for our facilities. We have people coming to us with partnerships from Silicon Valley right now, from overseas with the European companies and European Space Agency have come to us. So we're kind of uniquely positioned, a little different. We're very focused on having a great set of technologies and find the people who use them, and we've been fortunate to do that thus far.
We talked a little bit about potential obstacles that are out there, economic. What other obstacles are out there? And maybe it's just, again, our mindsets. We're used to having that same job, doing the same thing for all these years. What are some of the other obstacles that are standing in the way of moving forward in innovation and developing these new products and companies?
Well, I think our biggest challenge, it's related to mindset, is really talent. And it's our ability to continue to draw in talent from all around the country and all around the world into Northeast Ohio. If you look at any of our technology sectors, whether we're talking about healthcare or IT or polymer sciences, they're desperately seeking skilled talent for positions all the way from entry level all the way to the PhD types of positions. And we have to have a platform by which we are out there marketing our region as a place of opportunity. And that means not just through a civic campaign, but it's a word of mouth campaign. It's what brought people to Northeast Ohio originally. It was a word of mouth campaign that there were jobs here, there was opportunity here. And that's how each of these communities ended up coming here. That's how my family came here. It was through word of mouth. That's what we need to reignite because the opportunities are here. We just need to get the message back out to the world.
Get the word out there. We talked about taking some questions, and we have our first one right now. And I think we're going to start over there on the left side. Go right ahead.
Hello. I'm Debbie Hansen with GreatLakesGeek.com. And I'm really excited about this panel because you're all very positive about the area and about Cleveland. But I have a question. Mr. Free, you mentioned that there's a kind of an inherent fear of science and math and business. And I wonder what any of you think we can actually do to encourage, especially our youth, to go into those fields and recognize how much there is to benefit from them, because you're right. Right now, people are afraid of it.
I guess from my perspective, I start at the back end and I say, look at the difference that scientists and engineers make in our everyday life. And that type of difference far outweighs the price you pay for maybe working on math a little harder, working on science a little harder. That to me is how I try and convince people. Now, you can ask my kids, they might have a different answer, right? Because they're at the front end right now. But you know, my belief is when you show the benefit, it's easy to convince people to go that route.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in addition to that, we've had such a focus in public education, at least over the last decade, on standards and tests. Standards and tests don't inspire people towards a career. And I think what we've lost in education in terms of STEM is an ability to actually inspire kids as to what the possibilities are if you do the work. That you've got to build up your basic skills and your building blocks, but you need to know what the end goal is, and it's the inspiration of what are the cool things that you can do if you pursue these paths.
I agree, and I just add on to that. I mean, I got inspired to work for NASA by watching planes land at the airport, you know, watching the space shuttle, learning about Apollo. I didn't get inspired because someone spent money on STEM. Right. And I think that's what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, we need to do big things, big, bold things, and not be afraid to fail sometimes.
That's right.
And sometimes I think that's where we can get our...
How about Mr. Wizard on TV? Was he very influential?
Yes. Super host.
He was for me, but I didn't do very well in science anyway. Luis, obviously you're in education. What do you see with young people coming into the university? Are they getting what they need in the earlier grades to properly prepare them?
Well, two very quick things. First of all, I think for you parents here, the most important thing that all of us can do is encourage our young men and women, and certainly their students here that can take that message. But secondly, indeed, all of us can get involved with our schools. And one of the ways that we've done that at the University of Akron is by partnering with our city, with our Akron Public Schools, with the National Inventors Hall of Fame. And first we created a STEM-intensive, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics intensive middle school. And as those kids are graduating, becoming one of the most successful middle schools in all of Northeast Ohio, we've created a STEM-intensive high school, again in partnership with the National Inventors Hall of Fame. That creates the excitement, but it also creates the continuity that is so badly needed.
All right, we have another question from our audience right now. Go ahead, sir.
I actually forgot my question.
Don't do that to us.
No, I do have a question. It's a two-part question. I would be curious as to what your thoughts are, the panel's thoughts are, on the most successful innovations over the last 5 years. And I'd love to have an idea of how you define success, a successful innovation.
Most successful innovation, you want to?
Well, let me start, and this is one of our great proponents of innovation, Rick Nottinger. Thank you, Rick. I think you can look at it, if we look at a specific technology, I could name you a dozen, but I think what we have been doing in Northeast Ohio with programs like your own, with programs like Beju's, that really create an innovation energy in Northeast Ohio, a buzz, has been arguably the most important thing that we could collectively do as a region, as a Northeast Ohio region. Getting some of our older companies to break out of their insular and secretive mode and start to collaborate and start to share their technology, start to ask questions of their competitors, of us at the universities, that is moving innovation forward. And below that, we can list dozens upon dozens of things that are becoming companies or are in the pipeline to become companies. So my vote would go to our cultural transformation.
How about you, Beju? That was not an easy question, but certainly worth contemplating.
It's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick an invention that has been the most impactful, for all of us. I've had the pleasure of watching a number of medical companies and medical inventions translate into products. And, you think about some of the things I would dream of as only science fiction when I was growing up. If you remember a technology or a show called Bionic Man or Bionic Woman, right, where you can kind of reprogram humans and give them superhuman strength through electronics. All that was science fiction when I was growing up. It's all coming into reality today as we're using now electrical signals to reprogram muscles throughout your body. And we've got a number of companies in Cleveland in Northeast Ohio that are doing this. This is called the area of neurodevice, and I think it's phenomenally interesting because it's curing not only muscle disorders, but it's also being used for depressions and other sort of neurological disorders. That's really amazing science to me.
I think I agree with Dr. Proenza. Just having the discussion about what's innovation, kind of igniting that drive in people to think about how can I be innovative. I grew up in a culture of you didn't take a lot of risk, right? Because either humans' lives depended on it or a $1 billion satellite depended on it. But so I think changing the way we approach things, having these kind of discussions is probably the biggest drive. I'd say the most nearest term innovative thing along your lines of electrical signals is a veteran, that what we're doing for veterans and people who've lost their limbs. There was a gentleman, I think 2 weeks ago, who climbed a Chicago skyscraper with a prosthetic device that was actually responding to signals from his muscles that were still in his thigh. And when you think about innovations like that have truly improved people's lives, it's hard to ignore those.
And Luis, you were talking in the back again over that very productive lunch about something that I found astonishing, this pancreas that people are talking about. Explain how far along that is.
Well, again, with the perspective that you are a polymer, we are creating polymers that can do things in the body. And one of our scientists has developed a polymer that can act like your pancreas. It can release insulin in proportion to the concentration of blood sugar in your body. So we hope to take it to animal trials and eventually into clinical trials, but all sorts of other things that could make life easier. A contact lens that responds to blood sugar and changes color so you don't have to prick your finger. We're emulating how a gecko is able to climb on the roof by creating nano fibers that can have adhesive properties without being sticky in the sense of usually think of adhesives. And you can just go on and on and on in this way. one of the Austin Bioinnovation Institute's innovations that just become a company. A doctor and some of our scientists got together, realized that kids that have scoliosis, curvature of the spine, in order to survive that and grow up with it straight, they have to have surgeries about every 6 months because they have to lengthen the rods that keep the spine straight. Well, what they developed is a rod that can be lengthened externally through a magnetic device to rotate a threaded rod. And just imagine the amount of life-saving, pain-saving improvement that alone represents. So there are just so many things, but cultural innovation is what we've been doing, Rick, and thank you for your role in it.
It's all very inspirational. Do we have time for another question, or we want to go to Harlan? No more. We want to hear from the guy who runs this place, a wonderful man who's been here for years, Executive Caterers, good friend, Harlan Diamond, with some thoughts for us all today. Harlan?
Lou, thank you. Thank you, Lou. What a panel. Thank you. I mean, I can't believe that you're here on our stage. Corporate Club does represent Northeastern Ohio. And Doctor, you've been here 3 times. Baju, you've been here once or twice. And Jim, you're welcome anytime you want to come. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a wonderful year for us, and I wanted to make sure that everybody sees Jan Jones. Jan, stand up, will you please? She's been an addition to our corporate club this year. And I want to thank her and Mike Rogers and Sharon Smutak and Christine and everybody that helped make this thing happen. And Lou, you did a great job today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. How about a group hug, everybody? Very nice. Thank you, Harlan. And thank you, Beju Shah from Biomotive, Luis Proenza from the University of Akron, Jim Free, the Deputy Director of NASA. Thank you all for coming this afternoon, talking about unleashing innovation at Executive Caterers at Lander Haven. Have a great day, everybody.
For over 20 years, the monthly corporate club programs at Executive Caterers at Lander Haven have dealt with those issues which impact the lives of people living in Northeastern Ohio. This series of monthly programs are content-driven. We ask questions of people who know the answers. They head up corporations. They serve in local government. They're committed to improve education, are involved in local professional sports. They are people who make the news, people who report the news. You've seen their faces. The questions we ask at the corporate club programs are important. What will it take to improve our educational system? Where is our national and regional economy headed? How do we move Cleveland forward? Where is the new leadership coming from? How do we attract and retain talented people to this area? How will University Circle develop? What will the Horseshoe Casino mean for Cleveland? What are the prospects for Cleveland's professional sports teams? Where is the money for medical research? What are the great things that are happening in this area? The takeaway from being a sponsor of the corporate club programs is that you'll be identified with major community concerns, that your company and you want to be involved with the important challenges facing this region.